Hi, everyone. This is NORCAM Phil from North Reading Public Access Station, NORCAM. And I am here today. I have the esteemed privilege to be talking to I guess you could say the president, the director of one of my favorite organizations in the greater Boston area. And he's been around for quite a while. He's been there, and he's recently going to step down, but I'll have him tell you all about his history and what he's done with the organization ABCD. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to John J. Drew. Hello, John. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you, Phil? What's your name now on camera?
You can NORCAM Phil is one of the other.
I like that.
Yes. So yeah, that's what.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being on.
Yeah, I'm John Drew, President and CEO of Action for Boston Community Development, ABCD. And for those of you who don't familiar with that type of introduction, we are a charitable organization. We're a non-for-profit, but underlying all that, we have a congressional mandate from Washington going back to 1964, which is to alleviate poverty, to maximize the community's participation. And today, in these days of 2022, we have quite a bit of participation by communities. But when I came around in 1965, 66, 67, it was a time when this country didn't have, and was muted a lot from the communities and rural areas. And that's the way it evolved. At the same time, we were talking about, in the 60s, we're talking about civil rights, we were talking about voting rights, segregation, and there was a whole barrel, if you will, of pushing up against society for things that are badly needed. And one thing that was important, the ABCD was created very early, 1964, actually created in 1962 to combat what was then called urban renewal. Poor people were being pushed out of places so they could build higher priced places. Sounds familiar, right? And we were put together with a Ford Foundation grant to do a study and come up with the mayor and everybody else. But and that was going to run out in 1963. Then along came the war on poverty, Lyndon Johnson. President Kennedy had been assassinated. And there was just a mood to get things done in a country like ours, which things don't happen fast. You may have noticed in Washington, things don't happen fast. They happen fast here. And that was terribly important because ABC was created. I came in later, but my children were in Head Start. I was a Head Start parent in 1966, 67, as I was trying to get out of public housing and get on my feet. But importantly, for your viewers, up until that time, there had been no direct relationship between your national government and neighborhoods and rural areas. It went through, whatever did go down, went through other functions. This was a major attempt to empower with money, and otherwise communities had been left out. Low-income communities, urban areas, a lot of rural areas. And that money came through ABCD, in this case for Boston, and eventually from Greater Boston. And what we did with it and what was done was to set up a major center in every neighborhood in Boston. That center could have money from us. They were able to hire staff. But they had to put together a board from that neighborhood that then could help make policy for them. Policy, whatever there may have been in the past, was done by other people. And there's a lot of pent up feelings, including people who had been left out because of their race. Slavery had ended officially in 1865, but it didn't get over, and has not get over completely, but it sure hadn't got over 100 years after that. So there that pent up, alongside of the pent up feeling of communities being totally left out without resources to be able to help themselves. They also had it, we had so much going on that people were left out because of voting and all kinds of issues that you'll read your history books. I lived it, but you'll read it. But basically, building up was African Americans, and then others being left out or being segregated away from the voting booth. Terribly important to be able to have the power of the vote. So all of that stuff was building up in addition to a war called Vietnam, in addition to major things like new Medicare program, increased Social Security, many issues for the elderly that had been sitting back and waiting. And so ABCD itself functioned as a governing agency, still does, and made sure that neighborhoods and people in their neighborhoods had a chance to lead, had a chance to get on a board. I know some great people from those days that never thought of themselves as being a leader. They got onto a board and became a leader. Some actually went on in the coming generations to become elected leaders. Many of the people who are in elected office came through ABCD at one time. So that was an atmosphere. I was giving you a little background, just, it was sort of like a Silicon Valley startup. It was brand new startup. And but the people who were getting started up were not the high income people, they were the low income people across the country. So we had the opportunity, ABCD, to do new things that hadn't ever been done before. So we created legal services for the poor. We created health center because health was a huge issue, still is, but then absence of health access, dental access in communities, low income color, was not there. People actually had not had very good health. And therefore, they were not able to compete with others in society for jobs, education. So we set up the first neighborhood health center in each one of our locations, organize and help, and we got almost every neighborhood in Boston has a community health center. Why is that important? Well, people could go down the street to get the health care. They didn't have to go to an emergency room. And we had dentists on sites at the first health center we set up, Columbia Point. And then because we had the health center at that time, I can go on and on, folks, so sorry about that. But I lived it. And one day I got a call from my health director, Dorothy Garrison. This is probably 1973. John, there's a fella from Gerber Foods wants to talk to us. I said, well, what the heck? We'll find out what he has in mind. And what he said to us was there's some small money in the budget that's not being used for specifically targeted to women who are pregnant, postpartum, who basically are not nourished properly, don't get their vitamins. They don't have access to a lot of basic commodities that any person should need for both the mother and the child and the family. So we eventually called it the WIC program, Women's, Infants, and Children. We went down to the bank and said, this is brand new, what do we do? Can you hold some money? And then one of our people went over to the grocery store or whatever, said, we got coupons, they can only get formula, they can only get this and that, and vitamins and Pampers and everything that would be needed to help people get a healthy baby. Keeping in mind that the death rate for birth, particularly in African American and other communities, was the highest in the country in parts of Boston. So clearly that had to be addressed. And to address it means that you got to get a woman and a family through the birth to have a healthy baby. If she's healthy, then stay with them a year to make sure that the babies, and this is one thing we learned too, is that everybody thought somehow or another a child started thinking at 3. They don't. They start thinking at pre-birth. And they develop their brain that first year. So all of those things came together. And now it's a national program. And we started so many things that we're able to get off the ground, get going. And I was part of that. And I always feel grateful that I was able to be there at the time. And my skills I brought in was I had been able to get out of public housing and get an education. I was a CPA, and things are, all that startup, all startup things sometimes get a little messy, and the government says, when did you do this and this and that? So I come in to help out for about 6 months, so it's 51 years later, to make sure that the organization was able to survive, because the mission was there, the people were there, the feeling that, hey, we can do things we never did was there. So we also had to make sure it ran like a business, because otherwise the government starts saying, ooh. So that was my role originally. And of course, I developed more and more over the years of trying to keep programs together, working with Bob Cord and a board, a wonderful board, 51-member board. So every time I thought I had a chance, I was going to take a chance to move on, there's always something to keep me here. Now I'm 84, going on 85. I have 51 years at ABCD, and I have a wonderful successor, Sharon Scott Chandler. So and I have a wonderful board. So, and we were able to create during that time, we were able to get access to purchase property. That's important, any business, but in particular our business, where we had 2,000 children in preschool, 0 to 5. And every time you turn around, one of the people renting is throwing us out. So we had to control our property. So we were able to build up enough property so that nobody could push us over, and we could do quality work with the children. And you've heard talk probably about LIHEAT, which is basically heating assistance. Right now, air conditioning too. For people who can't afford, I can't imagine right now what it takes to pay a utility bill. It really is. I talked to one woman yesterday, I think, and she said she's paying $6,000 a year versus $2,000. So these things come along in cycles. But what happened in 74, 75, 19 was that OPEC, that cartel, that monopoly that decided to get together and to this day decide how much oil is in the market and what the price will be. So the price of home heating oil went from 25 cents a gallon to $1. So that's why we created this heating assistance program, because people were not able to pay. And we're continuing to this day because we've been able to add to it substantially. In addition to helping people pay the bills that right now would be astronomical for people, we also do weatherization. We make sure to reduce as much as possible the loss of heat. We have replaced boilers, we replace heating systems. Now we've got another program where we're doing the whole house. So we've built up, and we're also, quite frankly, very cognizant of global warming. So the work we're doing, for example, we're working with the state and utilities now, so that all of the heating systems in the state eventually will move over to electric pumps, and we'll be part of that. So all of these things evolve because of the fact that you need to serve people, and to serve people in the need they have, you have to have the ability to be able to provide that. So that's a big thing we do, and we try our best to pay our people. We don't pay big salaries, but we try our best to keep people. We have a lot of people here who've been here quite a while, because a lot of people came here from their neighborhoods and were able to move right up. They got jobs. So I know I'm going on a bit, but it's hard not to say this to your audience without just stopping here and say, here's what we're doing in 2022, but not understanding where we came from.
No, please. And John, it was my fault. I told you to go. So that I put a quarter in you, you went. But no, that's an amazing story. And that I've heard so much and dealt with your organization a bunch in the past, pre-pandemic, with NORCAM. And it's always been a pleasure to see these programs you and your organization are putting together. And even though the outreach, and even like I'm reading right now, one of the things that Lee Fenner, your lovely PR woman, told me about, in 2015, you guys expanded to serve Malden, Medford, Everett, and neighboring towns. And it wasn't just Boston, you were just expanding out, like even around Reading and North Reading. Yeah,
and Quincy for this program we do. But we're also partners with 22 other ABCDs in the state for a lot of things we do together. But you mentioned pandemic. I was here for the blizzard of 75. Oh my God, what 1975. That was, you had to live through it. It was a hurricane, it was a blizzard. I had to walk under the L tracks. We got open. We're the first ones open because every street, oh, by the way, there's no such thing as ATMs. It's a cash economy. And every street was blocked about 6 foot high with snow. So we had the local supermarkets. Each one of our neighborhood programs went to and said, Mr. Drew is authorizing X amount. You'll have to take his word. And they did. And they were able to get groceries out to some people that needed it during the blizzard. And we did more than that, but just the fact that was a big test for us. We were on the ground. And then in the big meltdown in 2006 and 7, 8, when everything collapsed, we were part of a major stimulus program by the Obama administration. And by the way, I am bragging a bit, but the Obama Library in Chicago has asked me to do a sit-in with them to talk about that period of time. So I'll be doing that this month. If it
Well,
ends up-
that's congrats.
ends up in the library, that'd be good. But the point being that we were on the ground then to get people back to work. And then in March 2020, we were on the ground, never get off the ground for the pandemic. Diapers, clothes, people, the economy shut down overnight, just overnight. We all know that. It's just that we didn't at the time understand it. The person who has a job or 2 jobs and relies on getting that paycheck on Friday and maybe pay the rent, and then overnight lost their job. They had no savings. So we opened up, we worked with the Greater Boston Food Bank, we worked with a lot of other people to try to mitigate, help. We got money from Congress for the stimulus, from the Obama administration. So what I'm saying in that, those 3 instances, there's more, is that we were set up in the neighborhoods to be ready to go any day in the week. But when something hit like this, we could be out there, and we made a lot of partners and we did the best we could. We couldn't save everybody, obviously, but I think we did a really good job of helping people get through the next day for food, helping people from getting thrown out of the housing because they can't pay their rent, and a bunch of other things that we did to mitigate as much as we could, that particularly that first 6 months when there was no program at all. There was no unemployment. People were destitute. So we stepped up to that, and that's what I consider our mission is, to be sitting on the edge of the precipice of where people go from not rich, but able to take care of themselves, to others who are wonderful people, but because of life or whatever it was, every emergency is the real emergency to them. And so the pandemic showed up a lot of things, including how many children didn't have access to broadband, so couldn't participate in school. So we got a program for that. And so many people who decided to leave their job, not go back. So we got a lot of job openings in our early childhood program right now. But that's part of everybody's issue coming out of the pandemic, is a very, very changed workforce. So we are now working to get more programs to help people get retraining to jobs, to get into the new skills in computers, to get access. So that'll be one of our major initiatives that we're going on right now and continue. And as long as ABCD is able to continue, it'll keep doing this. It'll keep asking people. I have 4,000 volunteers, so they're wonderful people that volunteer. We have a tax program. We did 5,000 tax returns for people with the IRS right online, and they got their refund before anybody else. But point is that they were able to get access to the earned income tax credit, to child tax credit. So as a result, $8 million of that, their refunds for them to apply, but it didn't cost them anything, goes directly into the households, which helps improve their lives. So sort of another illustration of how we try to think about what we're going to do and how the effect will be. So doing tax returns, that's wonderful. But making sure that we're working with the IRS directly, making sure that people get trained, get a lot of people trained to be tax preparers. We don't charge people. They set up a bank account so they can do some financial management. These are all byproducts of doing that one thing for people who need access. And we're probably either not filing and/or not filing for the right benefits, or going and paying $300 or $400, $500 to have a tax return done. So that's another major program we've been doing for about 25 years. And we've just finished up, and I'm sure we'll be doing it again next year.
Yeah, no, I remember we had a program, I think, about the tax assistance, and it was great. We were hearing all about it. I mean, just for anyone, that's an amazing feat. And I think you guys were open to everyone, just literally just come on in, just bring, I don't think it was necessarily an income thing too, to just have someone take a look, which is kind of great.
Certain programs, there was incomes, but that was because to get the credit.
Yeah.
But we tried not to turn people away. But again, we did it through our neighborhood. So people in the neighborhoods could come to our centers or do it online in some cases here, which we were able to set up, rather than going someplace else and paying a lot of money. But the point being that our objective here was to make sure that people who are entitled to an earned income tax credit for working hard, a child tax credit because of they have children in need, to make sure they get that money and they get it directly to them, and they worked awful hard. Maybe they didn't get rich, maybe they're just making do. So getting $3,000 or $4,000 from these benefits, that'll get them over to the next loop in life and maybe get the children to some school. So the whole idea is to generate household income. We look at everybody, we have 50,000 households that we work with. But we look at one household at a time. That household looks like X and X amount of resources. And so what can we do with that household to make them more better off enough so that they can think about something besides how do I pay the rent, but I have enough food, and when the children will get this and that. Getting that house with the tax credit, with the heating assistance money, which goes directly to the dealer, with other programs that we have, we stabilize the households and we give them the opportunity to actually take a deep breath. You know, I can actually think about doing something 3 months from now if my house basic needs are met. So it works that way.
Yeah, no, it like you said, you cause them to be able to take a break from the worries of just life in general. Like you said, for some people, one emergency can turn into 3, and they can, it can trickle down into something that just they can't, and sometimes people are just, I was at a point when I was a paycheck away from being pretty much penniless and on the street in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm lucky enough, I have a safety net of sorts, but no, I've been there where just like I was somewhere I didn't have this. If I lost that paycheck, I'd be gone. And it's so much easier for people like myself and others who can just like, yeah, I can, either lean on family or something else. But if you don't have that, and if you don't have the community, it needs to be put together. And that's why ABCD is pretty great. And I wanted to move on to like one of the things, food security is a big thing too. And I know that's what your organization delves in. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, food is also always an issue with regard to people who have families in need to get nutrition. You can get food sometimes, but you're not getting enough nutrition. You can't get fresh vegetables. So the food desert is called, and people who have not enough money to meet their basic needs and be able to also feed their family in a way that would give the children and their elders a proper nutrition. And so food stamps is created for that. And we worked on that many years to get that going. We did surplus food commodities before that, where people came to us and we gave them bundles of food. And we've been doing a lot of work with people like the Greater Boston Food Bank, because we have at least 8 food pantries in our system, and there's another 10 or 12 food pantries in our district. So we wanted to make sure, for example, during the pandemic, and we worked with the food bank to be able to get fresh vegetables into all of those centers. And kind of interesting, given the talk these days about baby formula. we would get requests for people coming in for diapers and formula. They couldn't afford it. So food is related to life, obviously. It's related to your ability to be able to buy the food that is needed by your household. There's nothing wrong with fast food, but you can't make, you try to get your budget stretched with fast food, then you got other problems like diabetes and heart. There's a lot of things we look at in our Head Start program with our 2,000 children. They go every day. We have a nutritionist there working with the families. They get fed all day, and they go to a health center and they get their checkup. We determine whether they've got a vision problem undetected or hearing problem undetected. But a lot of times too, we find out that when they got to us in the morning, that at the start of the day, they haven't had anything to eat. So sometimes hunger or hunger wants, or lack of nutrition is hidden. People don't talk about it. You know, you make do, and the kids make do. And once you're starting to make do, because I've been there, I was in public housing. Nothing wrong with public housing, but it was allowed to retreat there. I was there when I was growing up. I was allowed to retreat there when I was hurt and had to get off my feet. But my point is that these programs were introduced through government and through us, basically because people were hungry. And basically, it's cyclical. What's the problem now besides that? Inflation. Inflation. People go to the supermarket and they paid $50 last week and it's 85 now. They can't afford 85. So what do they cut back on? So, okay, let's get you onto food stamps. So meanwhile, you'll be able to get some extra nutrition through this food stamp program, or you come in to one of our food pantries and a lot of others and get 2 bags of groceries at least once a month, maybe every 2 weeks. So you try to put the availability of nutrition and food in front of people who need it.
Yeah, it's incredibly important. And it's like you said, it's not talked about enough, that hunger, even just like in its base state, hunger is something that prevents someone from thinking right or acting or being being able to keep a hold of their emotions or their, of anything, just their entire being. So, I mean, yeah, I'm glad you get to work with the Greater Boston Food Bank. They're a great organization, and they do a lot for people. Don't realize how crazy big it is either.
Always big.
Yeah.
I started as a volunteer when they were cutting. I've been around a long time. And
Yeah.
we go over and start cutting cheese. We were volunteers in the early days, cutting cheese and stuff. And no, they've done a fantastic job of being able to be there working with food pantries, but also being big enough to get into the food chain and be able to get some changes made in certain products. And that's very, because you look at what's happening with formula now, and I got a call on that first. And I said, this is going to be a real big problem. Why? I said, because I've been around a lot. I get 6 children, but also take care of a lot of children, babies. And without that proper nutrition in that product, brain development, and all kinds of other things that we don't know how. One thing that happens with catastrophes is we learn things, right? We learn how important formula is, that you can't just take something off the shelf and change it. You can't. And we learned the hard way, but we learned, and hopefully we'll not go through this again, because we all depend on, for the next generation, is healthy babies, particularly infants. And I think this is a wake-up call, has been a wake-up call, but food is so, it sounds simple, but it's brain, it's the body, it's the nourishment that makes what you are and how you're going to function, and whether in fact your brain development goes, whether your physical development, your emotional development, it's all related to what you take in nourishment. And we've learned a lot over the years, but a lot of victims too.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm a broken record, but I appreciate everything your organization does, and the time you took with me and just with through your whole career to do all this. And one of the things I think I had said when I interviewed anyone from your organization, I always say I always love hearing the message and preaching about fighting poverty and working with people impoverished, because you hear so much in the political language, and it's not a bad thing per se to talk about the middle class, but you rarely hear politicians on a populist level talking about poverty. You rarely hear them say we have to get everyone out of poverty. It's usually they feel like their base is more like a middle class thing, and they don't have to deal with, because the poor don't vote. Kind of that's the kind of message it sounds like. And organizations like this, the Greater Boston Food Bank and other local food pantries, it's always warms my heart and also gives me hope, which is important. Which I don't know. Could you talk about that a bit? The fact of hope, I guess, in this sort of context.
I mentioned hope, and hope. I was given some hope when I was up, and encouragement and open doors. We are each other's brothers and sisters keepers. We can make life difficult. We can make life helpful, but you live every day based on hope. Whether you have it, when you feel like I can do something here, my child's going to do well if I do this, if I can do that. I think most of us look at that hope thing and say, yeah, I can make it. I can make it. But if you can't say that, then that's passed on to everybody else around you. But let me also mention something that you mentioned, because I haven't stressed this, and I should. Part of going directly into neighborhoods in today is also to encourage community participation in voting and registration and running for office. So we can't tell anybody how to vote with the money we have, but we run sessions for voter registration. We work with the city. Everything we can do to get people to take their lives over by voting for people who either look like them or say things that make them hopeful. I would say decades ago, that wasn't the case for lots of people. But if you want to look at the Boston City Council now and look at the mayor, much different time. These people came through the process of hope and opportunity and was able to open the doors and understand that voting is such a big right that we all can talk about the elections, and that's too simple. Our wonderful Constitution has lasted this long, has said, this is a republic. You will send representatives for you. In Washington, D.C., we sent nationwide 435 individuals in the members of Congress and the House, 100 members in the Senate, and 1 president. That's 536 people have the absolute power to make decisions for us 400 million. So it's very important at the federal level, and clearly the state and the city, that people who get elected hopefully are responsive to the communities that sent them. So education, we do immigration, where people who have their green card come in, we work with them to get them to apply for and get them a citizenship training program. Because citizenship and being able to figure a full-fledged member of society is terribly important too. So we have a large immigration community we dealt with over many years, because Boston's a port city, and we had very low immigration the last few years, but that had to do with politics. Boston's an immigration port, and people that come in, they need English. We have English as second language. We help with migrate. So all the talking I've done today, Phil, is not to say that we're perfect, that we can do everything right. I can leave you with one possible illustration that probably can think about. People have a pocketbook, they got a Visa card, they go to the grocery store, they go to Target, they go wherever they go. They need to buy something. They go to a cash register, they pay for it and take it home. We have dealt with and deal with communities where people don't have a lot of Visa cards. They may not have a lot of cash, but they still need things. So every one of our centers is open without a cash register. Without a cash register. If you come in and you're needy and we have something you need in that place, that store, you'll get it. You don't have to pay for it because it's deemed that you couldn't pay for it to begin with, and we don't want you to walk out of here with no help. So think of us without the cash register. We're not helping everybody who doesn't need help, but we're helping those, hopefully, as much as possible, for those who need the help, elderly and disabled and others. So the cash register actually comes from the individual donor who wants to send money to us, take it off your taxes. We have a lot of donors. We have foundation money. We have money from government. We have individuals that contribute. Collectively, that allows us to field every day staff, resources, food, and no cash registers. So obviously, I have to let you know, for us to continue doing our business, we'll need people to give us the money necessary to do that in various forms. So I keep trying to, and we keep trying to let people know, very importantly, we want to let you know that the money you have given to us to help people, be it from the taxpayer or the individual or foundation, this is the job we did with it. Hopefully that you think that's well enough so you can continue to contribute.
Yeah, well, you got my vote and my dollar. So I'm thankful that time, well, I mean, just, through the channels you mentioned, regardless if I give the federal money that is from me, gives to you. And to your talking about immigration, one of the things, this grand experiment, and it still is an experiment of the American Republic. I'm glad you called it a republic because that's what it is, and people forget.
Yep.
Is that we need to integrate everyone because it wasn't meant for one particular person, a type of person, you could say, one that wants to live out their life without infringing on the rights of another. And that's, I think, will be an earthling thing soon, hopefully.
It is, and I've lived quite a while, so I can only say that when people come to this country, however they got here, and most people I know, they were able to get here through means that allowed them to get in. You are not a person that's coming to get something for nothing. You're a person we need each generation to expand and take places in our workforce. Right now, we're short of workers. We need people to bring their skills at various levels. Immigration is the heart and soul of the United States, has been from the beginning. Clearly, those who've been here for a while sometimes think, why am I putting up with new people? But if they thought about it, 2 generations back, you came from new people. We don't have an indigenous population of people from the United States. We have a country made up of immigrants or immigrants. They left their country, and that'll continue.
Yeah, and everyone's gotta live together. That's also the other things, like, regardless.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope we can go kumbaya, but I think basically this new generation we got, and the new generation we got, and more of the social media, the new technology that's only very, very young, is going to either drive us together or separate us entirely. And hopefully that's more putting us together.
Yeah, and honestly, like, one of the things that I come off a little cold, I guess, saying it, but I'm like, well, no, we don't have to like each other. You just have to live with each other. Like, that's the biggest.
Empathy is the word I always use.
Yeah.
A little bit of empathy that you can look at the other person and sort of understand enough about them, even if you don't like them. Who has to like everybody? But empathy, they're another human being. They have feelings. They have, and they've got a background that may be this and that, but we're all basically one species called human beings. And unless we learn to live real well together, then we'll have other problems, and I don't want to get into that. I feel comfortable to say that what we do and other people do is to further people coming together, keep them working together, working as volunteers to help others, working to help each other. And if we can help each other in that way, then we come together and you get empathy and you get understanding. And maybe we should bottle it. I don't know, Phil.
Well, you've done a good job of bottling there and sending in, shipping it out. But is I guess one of the final thing I'll ask you, what do you want your legacy, or what do you see your legacy through ABCD as?
I've been asked the question. I'm not sure I have the right answer,
Hmm.
Todd. But the legacy is, as I've been describing it now for a while to you, is with some wonderful people. We were able to build up this, I believe, wonderful juggernaut, big enough to stand in its own, big enough to take pushbacks, but respected enough that we will continue and adapt and change to whatever the circumstances are, because unless we eliminate poverty entirely, unless we are able to take care of everybody without any problems, we're going to need ABCDs. And we're going to need people who are listening and others to join us. So the legacy is that we made it. And yeah, my efforts and a lot of other people's efforts, overcoming the initial, believe me, I can only tell you this from experience, is that we were put here at that time in the 60s because of so many things happening, And then the politics come in later of people trying to reverse in politics what happened with Johnson. So we were constantly having to be pushed away because people thought it was somebody else's program. I think we've been around long enough for it to settle in that we're not going anyplace. We're not going to be pushed out of this and that, and that people really want us. So in some ways, this is not a great way of saying it, but for some people in politics, we're a fig leaf that they can look at and say, well, we'll cover some of it. But for most of the people I know, I'm on a national lobbying board representing New England. They're just people like us, and they're trying their best, you can't agree with everybody, to take care of all of the needs, and there's so many needs. I just think the legacy for ABCD is that not just survival, was able to make a major impact, and along with a lot of other ABCDs, in their communities, where it's no longer looked at as that charity down the street, it's looked at as a major institution that is needed in Boston, Chicago, around the country. And I think that's a big achievement. And I'm proud of that.
Yeah, I'd say congratulations for your time there. And it seems like you and ABCD have made quite a dent, a positive impact on a lot of people's lives. And I hope, and I'm sure, like you say, I think you'll be there for a long time coming. Well, John, thank you very much for taking the time.
Phil, thank you very much for the time. And have a good, whatever you got going in front of you today.
You too. And have a great retirement.
I plan to. I'm going to sleep the first month. I haven't had a vacation since 1984. So I'm going to.
Oh, my God.
Well, a real vacation.
Yeah, a real vacation. Yeah. Well, hey, enjoy it, my friend.
Yeah. After that, we'll see.
Good.
But you and all our viewers, let's just all try to have an understanding for each other. We have to be able to pull together. We have to help each other. And if we can't do that, I don't know what it's all about.